Welcome to the Dog Classroom.
The Dog Classroom podcast. I am your co-host, Anne-Marie.
And I'm your co-host, Amelia.
Like and subscribe
on Spotify and YouTube in video format. And now into the episode.
Here we go. Welcome, everybody, to another episode from the Dog Classroom podcast. There we go. That's what we're doing as a podcast. I keep getting stuck that we're doing webinars or seminars, but yeah, we're here. We are actually talking about noise phobias.
Yes.
Noise sensitivities. There's a lot more issues with dogs out there that people come to us for help for. There we go.
Right. Yes. It's not always about pulling, jumping, barking.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, honestly, the few ones that we see obviously are the worst ones, but I think there's way more dogs out there that have sound sensitivities that people are just ignoring or living with.
Or don't realize that there's anything they can do.
Yeah, that's true.
Right?
That's
so
true.
Sometimes they don't even realize, like, why would I call a trainer? What is training going to do for this noise issue that they're having?
Right. So, it's not like you hear about people very often with different sound sensitivities. But now that I'm saying that, that's maybe where we get into PTSD. But anyway, we're not even going to. Oh, yeah, I know. See, because I was thinking of the Army people. Anyway, I'll let that go.
Right.
Yeah. So back to
dogs.
Back to dogs. I'd like to start off with thunderstorms and fireworks because I find this is the most common sounds that cause emotional and mental issues with the dogs.
Right.
I think partially is because we don't necessarily experience them throughout the whole year, right? They seem to be somewhat seasonal, though I find fireworks lately are getting more random, where just random you see these pops or these lights up in the air. But with dogs, we don't even say train it. We just sort of let it happen. I know there's some different organizations out there that have actually created different DVDs or different sound dialogues where the music is classical, and then you have a few thunderstorms and then classical thunderstorms.
So it's like a program for desensitization.
Right.
Almost.
And I think what I'm sort of starting to get at a little bit is ideally having it considered as part of training, having it considered as that's something that we should also work through. I know I've been mentioning it more, and I try to, even with like walk-in and recall, is trying to go to different places in the city where there's different things going on, and whether that be noise, whether that be visual. But a lot of times I find, and then again, working with a dog the other day, is this dog was scared of traffic, but the dog actually started to react before he even saw the vehicle.
Because of just the context?
I think the context, but also could hear it coming, right?
Yeah. So you knew it was the sound more so than the visual.
So the anxiety was being built up as the sound got louder and louder, and then saw it, which then the dog would react, right?
Interesting.
So, yeah. So there's my little example. So I'm, in short, I really want people to try to desensitize or at least expose the dogs to those thunderstorms or fireworks just out of context, just... We now have sound apps. We now have YouTube where we can just play a little bit of something here and there, because the tricky thing is we cannot control the sound when they happened.
Exactly, yeah.
Right. So last year, I think we had our first thunderstorm in like April, and I don't think anybody was ready.
No, I mean, I think like we've had a few when we've been teaching classes. I know that I have anyway.
Yeah.
And sometimes, like if I have a puppy class and it's thunderstorms, I'm like, don't even panic about it. Every time you hear a boom, give them a cookie.
Yeah.
We want to start like whether they're scared or not, this sound is either a good thing or it's just something that happens in the background.
Yeah, and the best thing you can do is just go on like you would. Exactly. I think the tricky time is if it hits and you're not home.
Right.
Right. And then they feel alone, and then there's a sound they haven't really heard. And sometimes it can be quite excessive or repetitive. So, but, to say again, if they've heard it before, when you have been home and nobody was stressed about it and everything like that, then when you're not home, it's, a little less stressful. The other thing to say is, play a little bit of classical music on a dark, rainy day.
Yeah.
That sort of thing. And just, I don't want to say drown it out, but make it less obvious that sound's happening.
I think, too, one of the things that I've heard, and I don't know if you've heard this as well, but that dogs sort of feel like the humidity drop or something like that.
Barometric pressure.
Okay, that's what it is. Okay.
Yeah, and you can actually measure it, because I know my dad had this, it's not even a clock, like it's just this little thing. It looks like a clock or a temperature thing on the wall. And yes, the dogs experience the shift in it. So they're already, once they sort of put 2 and 2 together, they're already stressed and know something else is going to happen, where we do not pick up on it.
Yeah, because a lot of people, and I know my childhood dog would start shaking like 3 hours before there would be any rain even. Like she would just know that there was something.
Yeah, I think rain a lot of times too predicts it. Yeah.
And that's basically the whole situation is that one thing predicts another thing. And that's dogs learn that way, right? Through making associations. So thunder predicts, that shaking feeling, or the rain predicts that there's going to be a lightning, and then the lightning predicts that there's going to be a thunder. And they just sort of get themselves in this little circle of panic.
Yeah. So in saying best thing to do is somehow try to expose them in every day where you can actually control the sound.
Yeah. And you can expose them at a level that everybody's still happy, right?
Yeah,
we don't want to. We don't want to take them outside on a thunderstorm and overwhelm them right off the bat.
Right. So now that you said we can control the sound, I just want to jump over to fireworks, where honestly I feel like we used to just experience that on July 1st, and like I said before, it seems to be happening multiple times, where sometimes you don't know when it's going to happen. But again, if you've exposed your dog to it and they hear this little popping, of course, it always depends on the sound of it, or the loudness of it depends technically who's letting them off, right?
Yeah, how close they are to
how
you.
close they are to you. So not to say, you can control your neighbors 5 houses down or anything like that. But the idea is then you're able to work through it, not acting like there's any type of stress. Suggestion is, shut the windows, just sort of. Yeah. So try to quiet down. But it's honestly, a lot of times they'll pick up from us if it's stressful. The other thing, honestly, to remember, and same with the thunderstorms, is they have better hearing. So we really don't understand. Like, if we think it's loud, you can only imagine, right? Yeah. So the tricky thing is, a lot of dogs, especially in the summertime, are going to camp.
Yes.
Right? Where they're experiencing these fireworks. So, what do? Well, having some music in the house, putting the dog in a basement and training them a little bit. Highly, highly do not recommend bringing the dog out to the beach to watch.
Yes, they probably don't enjoy it.
No, or down to the marina. Like, ideally, people hear stories every year about how a dog spooked and ran.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the scary thing is if they're so scared and that's happening, well, they can get lost. They can get hit by a car. Like, it's super scary. So don't just assume that they're going to be okay.
Yeah. And I think also that sort of triggered my memory here is a lot of people think that you can reinforce the fear by comforting your dog if they're scared.
Yeah.
And so I think it's important to know that you can reinforce behaviors, you can't reinforce emotions. And what's happening at that time is an emotional response, right?
Yeah.
So your dog isn't purposely panting and shaking and drooling.
Yeah.
And
it's beyond at that point.
So at that point, like, yes, please comfort your dog. Please tell them it's going to be okay. At that point, are they necessarily learning anything? No.
I don't think so.
But it's just like, if you or I got scared and we're like, hey, I need a hug, like, you'd probably say no. But
thank you.
But no, more likely I'd probably say no.
Yeah.
And then, that just tells me, okay, I'm still scared, but you're not safe. So I'm going to run. Right. And so we don't want the dog to, make any negative associations with us, because that's all emotion driven, just like the fight or flight when they're running. Yeah. Because people will go, oh, my dog has great recall. And I'm like, not when they're terrified of a firework or during a thunderstorm, because that's just survival mode. Yeah. And it's really scary when they sort of get into that point, because that's just panic. Yeah. Yeah. So a little off topic there, but you were talking about basically not bringing your dog to these events because they could get scared and run.
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of times, again, we want them to be social. We want them to be a part of the bonfire and the whole experience. But, you know, nobody asked them if they want to sit out there. So, you know, be, again, an advocate for it and protect them a little bit from it. They don't need to experience the lights in the sky, that sort of thing, and probably would much rather be inside with a stuffed Kong. So just be a little bit more aware of exactly what's going on. Because I know when Benjamin was young, he had quite a bit of noise.
That's your son.
Yeah, sorry. I'm looking at Amelia. Amelia knows who Benjamin is. But he was quite sensitive to sound, so he actually wouldn't even sit on the beach for the fireworks. He was in the house with the dogs watching a movie. So
yeah, and there's always, like, even now on social media, I get ads all the time for, like, these special headphones and those special headphones to drown out all the sound, because there's lots of people who are really sort of sensitive to that thing. Yeah. It's not maybe the same level as the dogs who just don't know what's happening and panic, but there can be emotions attached to
so I'm glad you just said that, because insane is the dogs don't actually understand what's making the noise, and it will go away. So they don't understand the whole concept. Yeah. They're just hearing the sound. So I think the understanding is a little bit different. So in moving on from thunderstorms and fireworks.
Can I ask you one question?
Yeah.
Have you seen, I know we've talked about thunder shirts, and we're going to talk about that in an episode coming up.
You're going to ask me about the pink one, right?
I'm going to ask you about that thing that goes on their head, the thunder cap, or...
Yes.
Have you ever experienced that at all? I have not.
Experienced it. I actually did order one.
Okay.
And I wanted to try it, but it was more for the visual part in a vehicle. So I was thinking of having it as an example, because they recommend putting it on and you train it like you would train a harness or a gentle leader. Therefore, they can't see the dogs outside the vehicle, so you're not having reactivity in the car, which is why I sort of got it as just an option and was going to play with it. But honestly, I put it in a safe place.
Yeah.
I'm not sure where that is.
But I've heard, because it comes like earmuffs or something to drown out the thunder sounds or something like that.
Okay, well then the one I ordered was not like that.
Oh, okay.
The one I ordered was more like a visual, but I'm not surprised now that maybe they have something like padded-ish.
Yeah, but basically, I mean, while we're talking about thunderstorms and fireworks, there's definitely products out there. There's definitely, listen to our other podcasts.
I know some of them will actually, some people actually put cotton in the dog's ears. You just have to make sure that it's not too far down. You can't really put earplugs in.
Yeah.
I know, but there's been a few people that have actually, used the cotton or whatever, or gauze as earplugs.
Interesting.
Yeah.
All right. So moving on from thunderstorms, fireworks.
Other things that clients have had concerns about. One for me is dishwashers.
Okay. Interesting. I could see that.
Right. What's one for you?
What about like the fire alarm beep? That's a big one in my house. Yes. Is even if I'm listening to or on a video or something, and somebody's in that video's fire alarm beeps, the dogs or the smoke detector, Yeah. The low battery thing. Yeah. They're not happy.
Yeah. It's really quite high pitched.
Yeah.
Yeah. Another one for me, vacuum.
The vacuum's a big one.
Yeah.
And I think one that just came to my mind was when I took Maui to some kind of trade show.
I'm just waiting for, okay.
Some kind of trade show.
I got a story about the vacuum
festival or something, and a man was playing a guitar. And Maui was scared. Yeah.
You never told me that.
I'm sure I did.
I don't think
He was a puppy.
He was a puppy? Yeah. Okay. Just because he wasn't sure what it was.
Yeah. I think the sound, the man was there with the guitar and that was fine. And then the sound, he was like, oh, nope. Absolutely
Blew his
not.
mind.
Yeah.
But the tricky thing, honest, with the vacuum, to me, it's not only the sound.
It's the movement.
It's the movement.
It's kind of freaky looking.
Well, it is. And we have to say the odd person has got a little excited and decided to chase the dog a little bit with the vacuum because it's fun.
That's not nice.
No, but, little did they thought it was pretty fun.
Wow.
Yeah. Anyway, but when it comes to the vacuum, and I used the same example at the beginning with the car, why not deal with the sound separate from the actual vacuum?
And I recommend that in puppy school.
Yeah.
And so when I'm doing puppy school or when I'm doing puppy socials I vacuum. Yeah. Because, so first of all, you got that really nice quiet vacuum. I don't know what brand that is, but shout out to that vacuum. Great
I know, but have you noticed now that I bought a cute little funky vacuum
that we're all using it,
that you guys clean more. So it was so worth my
the positive
purchase.
reinforcement.
I bought you a fun vacuum. You clean more.
So I mean, just when they're playing, I just turn it off, right? It's not making the sound, and I walk through and I'm doing the motion, and then just while everything's going on, I just turn it on for a few seconds, and nobody seems to notice or care, and I just say, okay, give your dogs a cookie for that. And it starts with just the sight, and then we go to the sound, and then maybe we would go to the central vac one day. Maybe.
I'm going to see Amelia with all that hose. But so that's definitely the thing is we can train it separate. We can move it when it's off, and then we get them used to the sound of it, and we can start with a lower sound, slowly increase the sound, and then actually get them moving with the vacuum. The other one little thing to add on is what I did with one of the dogs is every time the owner vacuumed, the dog got a stuffed Kong.
Okay.
So it wasn't like totally focused on that vacuum, that scary vacuum thing, where it was I'm chewing over here and I'm watching that move.
Yeah, that makes sense because then they're not sort of forced to sit there and stare at it, right?
Yeah,
it's just there. It's just kind of happening.
Yeah. Another one, snow blowers.
Yeah.
Quads. Whippersnippers. Lawnmowers. No, seriously.
Yes. Yeah. Is that what they're called? Weed whackers? I don't know.
Weed whackers. I call them whippersnippers.
Whatever.
Is it an age thing? Whippersnippers?
I don't know.
Okay. But literally, I had the dogs doing targets towards the weed whacker. And then I had him turn it on and not move it. And we trained the dog 20 feet away to take it. And then the wife would train the dog and do U-turns while the gentleman was just walking it around the yard. Like, these people are pretty hardcore. We should have got video because I thought that would be pretty cool to watch.
I feel like I remember you telling me about this when it was happening. But.
Yeah. And then we had to do the same thing with the lawnmower.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that can be a safety issue. So that's an important one, right?
Well, and that's why we then were on leash. Yeah. Because I know the odd time when we're in the back 40 clearing trees, Alfie will all of a sudden sort of go towards Mike if he's using the chainsaw.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, tolerates it to a point and then seems to spook a little bit. So we've worked more on, we do parkour while Dad cuts the tree up.
Yeah, we're just kind of over there on leash.
Yeah.
I think that's a good representation of things that people notice. I think there's also the component of dogs that are having noise issues that the owners maybe don't necessarily notice. And that would be more like the traffic or the kids playing in the park and the dog starts acting weird and they don't really realize why. Yeah. So I think there's things that maybe it's not like an all-out noise phobia, but there's a sound sensitivity.
You use a word for it. Is it trigger stacking?
Yes.
Oh, see, I just thought of that word. Yeah. I was quite proud of myself. So that's exactly what, a lot of times dogs will come and the people will say, oh, they're reactive, they're uncomfortable with dogs. But we don't realize the everyday sounds because I think we take them for granted. So what Amelia is saying is the dog comes out, okay, can tolerate the sound of the traffic. Okay. Mm-hmm. Tolerate the sound of the kids that you just walk by. Okay. Tolerated the sound of the motorbike that just went by. And then you add the dog barking. That's it.
Yeah. So it's like it's just stacking up until it's too much.
Yeah. So definitely. And that is what I say is we try to pull everything apart and deal with one issue at a time. And then we slowly put them together.
And so I think basically with all of these different examples, regardless of what the sound is, we're talking about two things. We're talking about desensitization. Yes. And we're talking about counter conditioning.
Okay, so desensitization
is basically exposing the dog to a stimulus, the sound in this case, where it's at a level that they can tolerate. Right. And then the counter conditioning part is changing how they feel about it. Yes. So you're not just exposing them to it, you're also at that point giving treats or giving a stuffed Kong, or you're doing something to sort of change the emotion that comes with it. Challenging to do in situations like fireworks where it's the neighbor and it's really close and it's really loud.
So sometimes management may kick in.
Sometimes there's a management component. Sometimes there's working on it with desensitization, counter conditioning. Yeah. I want to briefly touch on there's sometimes dogs with an all-out noise phobia and it's affecting their quality of life.
Okay.
And I can think of a few examples of dogs who, you know, they would hear a sound in the training space and that was it. They were done for the day and they needed to leave and they needed to, like, they absolutely could not function through that situation. Like, there was no desensitization going on. So I know there's some new medications out there. There's some different stuff that...
So actually, with Amelia bringing that up, in discussing this podcast, I did mention to her that I've found where some people will actually come to me and believe that the dog has separation anxiety.
Yes.
But there's a but in there because the emotion was first triggered by a sound.
Right.
So it was the dog was home alone, this sound happened, and for them, they just had to get out. So anytime now they're alone or the owner leaves them alone, they're going to associate it with that sound that terrified them and they just have to get out. So a lot of times, you know, we've had a few dogs go through windows, scratch the doors, chew moldings, and it hasn't been separation anxiety. So I think sometimes, you know, we always say record it and that sort of thing, but that is also affecting them emotionally. And you know, two different ones that we actually identified the cause was one of them, this dog was a rescue, so brought in at a few years old, was fine all through the summer. As the winter started and they used a wood furnace, the house shifted, right? And you hear sort of the crackling and the house shifting. Yeah. Dog went through the window.
Oh, no.
So the dog he actually built the dog a heated kennel and so forth outside, and the dog would then, when he left, would spend the time outside. And then another one that rings a bell was the nail gun of when they're doing shingles.
Oh, yeah.
The dog, it happened to be the neighbor had the roof redone and the dog was just absolutely awful. So we managed to narrow it down and there was a lot of construction. So what we backed up to is we did put the dog on, I believe, an anti-anxiety because it was quite extreme. We had the veterinarian's assistance in it, and we started the training.
Yeah, and that was sort of my point, is sometimes we need to work with the vet, right? If it's affecting the dog's quality of life, if there's a safety issue, like they're going to climb through the window, we want to make sure that we're working as a team with the vet and that, you know, they're getting the assistance they need to start the training, like you said. It's just to sort of put them at a level where they can handle desensitization. Yeah. Because sometimes they're so scared that's just not going to happen.
Right.
One thing I want to touch on just before we wrap it up is prevention. It's always good to talk about prevention.
Yeah.
And I know we were talking a little bit earlier about some of the things that I do in puppy school, like turning on the vacuum, playing some sounds while they're doing their off-leash playtime, that sort of thing. What are some socialization suggestions for people who want to prevent noise anxieties in their puppies?
I think, again, is, you know, when we talk about taking them different places, it's still the same thing. We talk about taking them different places to hear different sounds. Like the marina is a huge one with the trains banging, the kids on the skate park. A lot of times the dogs haven't even seen the kids moving so randomly. They just hear the banging of the skateboards. Yeah. Can be a trigger.
The sound of wheels is a trigger for a lot of dogs. Like the sound that it makes when they scrape.
Yep. Different roads. Like if you always walk your dog in the cul-de-sac, you're not going to get the sound of the dump trucks and the transports. You may get the odd motorcycle, but I find that's a definite one where you're walking, because the way that people figure out is all of a sudden they're on Arthur Street or they're on Red River and the dog is terrified. Yeah. Right?
And I remember when Nuggie was a puppy, there was some construction going on near my house. And I remember purposely going there and not like going up to the construction machines or whatever, but I was hanging out near and like she saw a pylon and that was a little bit spooky. So we stayed there and we hung out with a pylon and we worked through it and had some cheese. And then she's hearing the sounds of the construction. Like you can totally, you know, within a safe distance.
Safe distance, yeah.
Work off of construction sites, work off of different sounds. Like if there's... From your house, we can hear the gun range, right?
Yes, actually, that's a huge one if we're having classes outside.
Yeah, and so I'll just say, hey, every time you hear the pop, give your dog a treat. So you can totally work on things that maybe aren't in your everyday life, but that they might come across at some point.
Yeah, because we were actually at Centennial, and you could hear the concert they had last year at the marina.
Oh, wow.
It was so weird. Yeah. Even for us, we're like, what is that? And it was almost disturbing at the beginning because you thought something was happening at somebody's house. And then we realized it was the concert.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Sound travels.
Yeah, sound travels for sure.
So to wrap it up, I would say there's lots of different things that your dog can be sensitive to that involves sound, and not only sound, but also sometimes the sight of things, or the sound is a predictor of the sight of something scary.
Just remember that their hearing is 4 times better than ours.
Only 4? I feel like more than that.
Yeah, well, they're saying, times 4, but they were getting into this mathematical equation with decibels.
Okay.
But anyway, when your dog barks and you say there's nothing there, well, actually your neighbor 4 doors down will shut the car door.
Exactly, right? Their hearing is so good, and it's not something that you just need to ignore. It's something that you can actually work through.
Yeah, and it can be possibly fun doing it. Yeah.
So make sure that if you have questions about this episode, you can reach out to Anne-Marie. You can do that on our website, thedogclassroom.com. You can find us on social media. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Spotify.